Welcome to this series of A Beautiful World, A Positive Place. Hi everyone, I am Joy. Today, I would like to share an inspiring, real-life story. This story is about a brave man who stood up and fought for the abolition of slave trade throughout his entire life. When we talk about the liberation of black slaves, we would think of US President Abraham Lincoln. But what you may not know is that the liberation of black slaves actually started in Britain in the 18th century, and the driving force was a British politician, William Wilberforce. In the 18th century, the Industrial Revolution brought prosperity to the economy of Britain. This created a huge demand for human labor. However, harsh working conditions, infectious diseases, corruption, poverty, and crime pervaded across Britain. Among them, the most infamous and dominant was the slave trade. These black slaves are from the African continent. They were either deceived or kidnapped from their homeland and were sold as slaves at high prices to plantations in Europe and the United States. They were coerced to never-ending work, confined to dirty and foul-smelling small spaces, and their hands, feet, and necks were often tightly shackled with chains. They lost their freedom and dignity and were badly treated like animals. Slavery had left a heinous chapter in the history of human civilization. But then, there was a hero who was courageous and determined to fight bravely for the freedom and equality of these slaves. He was William Wilberforce. Wilberforce started his campaign against the slave trade in 1787, and with a group of activists, they formed the Clapham sect. They were very committed in their cause, and he made his first major speech on the abolition of the slave trade in Parliament the following year. Wilberforce was in his early 20s and was considered a junior among other members of Parliament. He was, however, not afraid of standing up against them. In these fiercely debated parliamentary sessions, he stood alone against more than 300 parliamentarians. He proclaimed, "Remember that God made men equal," and denounced the inhumane nature of the slave trade. In fact, the slave trade had been most profitable since the 15th century. It was the consensus of the entire society at that time, and the short-term economic benefits that turned a deaf ear to concerned voices against these slave trades. The proposal to abolish these slave trades had threatened the interests of many capitalists, including powerful businessmen, colonial forces, and members of the upper class. It was a challenging and daunting road lying ahead of Wilberforce. He proposed the abolition bill almost every year, but always failed to get it enacted into law. During the 17th century, the world was filled with crises such as the Reign of Terror, the proliferation of slave trades, and the war between Britain and France. The abolition of slavery advocated human rights and freedom and could be easily misunderstood with revolution. In the highly tensed international situation, the movement against slavery led by Wilberforce encountered great resistance. At the same time, he had suffered from ulcerative colitis. He could not help but feel physically and mentally exhausted. Wilberforce's determination and confidence fell to an all-time low. Fortunately, Wilberforce had met his spiritual mentor, John Newton. For 20 years, he was an investor in the slave trade and a captain for slave ships. After being rescued in a shipwreck, he was determined to stop all slave trades in hope to make amends for his past dealings. He wrote the popular century-old hymn, Amazing Grace, for his atonement. Newton had always encouraged Wilberforce to remain in politics and make use of his social influences to end the evil practices of the slave trade. With the support of his spiritual mentor and activist friends, Wilberforce regained his confidence and faith. They tried every means to gather evidence for slave abuse and spread messages on the cruelties of the slave trades to attract public attention. In the following few years, anti-slavery messages and posters could be seen everywhere. There was a portrait of a black man with the words, "Am I not a man and a brother?" They even called to boycott buying of slave-grown products, such as sugar, in an attempt to cut off slave trading by the sugar plantation landowners. In 1807, after Britain's war against the Revolutionary and France, the attention and support for the abolition of slavery became stronger. The turn of public's opinion had also made the abolition efforts more powerful. The evidences and public opinions collected convinced many members of parliament. Wilberforce saw that the time was ripe and he proposed the abolition bill again. In the parliamentary session, he presented the evidences of the criminal slave trades and garnered 390,000 signatures from his supporters to support his claims. Finally, on February 23, 1807, the Slave Trade Act 1807, an act for the abolition of the slave trade, was passed, carried by 283 votes to 16. Making slavery illegal in Britain. Wilberforce's mentor, John Newton, finally found redemption and passed away peacefully on December 21st the same year. After 20 years of determined efforts by Wilberforce and his activist friends, they finally achieved victory in abolishing the slave trade in Britain. However, Wilberforce realized it was still prevalent in many parts of the world. As a result, he continued promoting and enforcing laws at the international level, hoping to abolish the entire slavery system to completely liberate all slaves. By this time, Wilberforce was already over 60 years old and was suffering from many illnesses. He was already frail due to his long-term medication for his gastrointestinal problems. Despite his health's deterioration, he never gave up and he continued to fight on for 18 years until he decided to retire in 1825. With the continued efforts of Wilberforce's young supporters and successors, Britain finally passed the Slavery Abolition Act on July 25, 1833, officially declaring the abolition of slavery throughout United Kingdom and opening the door of freedom for all slaves. This was more than 40 years since Wilberforce first introduced the abolition bill. He had finally completed his life aspiration. 3 days later, he passed away quietly and peacefully. William Wilberforce was a venerated hero in history. Despite chaotic circumstances, he held firmly to his compassion and righteousness. He was willing to risk his youth, health, and life to challenge the wrong values of the society. His actions had brought hope for others. He is a good role model for us. Let us be influenced by his spirit and actions. In this current technological, materialistic, and civilized world, are we really more cultured and contented? Is our daily living more blissful and our future more secured? Instead, countless human lives around the world are being trampled upon every day. Human trafficking, child labor abuse, labor oppression, gender inequality, and racial discrimination, and the list goes on. We have become insensitive and arrogant. We use the most ruthless and cruel methods upon others and even mislead the world into thinking that the only way to survival is by eliminating others through ruthless competitions in life. In such an environment, defeating others and being ahead of others seems to be the way and purpose for us to survive. But is this really the only way? All of us are bestowed with an equally dignified, noble, and sacred life. We only live once, and all our lives are equally precious. Mother Nature has blessed us with this amazing grace. We shall not lay waste, harm, or exploit our own lives and the lives of others. Instead, we should make full use of our limited time we have to benefit our family, society, country, and the world, so as to live meaningfully and purposefully. Nature is our common homeland, and we are all one family. Let us take on the spirit of Wilberforce, and with our positivity and love, we can do things to bring fortune, happiness, and joy to the people of the world. Love and positive energy can be snowballed and passed on. If we pass them around, they will eventually come back to us. If all of us can spread love and positive energy together, this world will be a more beautiful place. We have come to the end of this episode of A Beautiful World, A Positive Place. I am Joy. See you again!